Welcome, Internet, to Psychologist's Casual View. Today we're going to be reviewing What Lies Ahead of Us When There Is No Future. Too Late to Awake by Slavoj Žižek. So let me preface this by saying that this book isn't pure psychology. It's a political essay and an economical essay that aims to try and understand our current world under the prism of psychoanalysis and philosophy. So for Slavoj Žižek, this book is as close as you can get to a political explanation of what happened in the Ukraine-Russia war, in our political economy, and in our apathy in general. I have to preface this also by saying that I am by no means a political expert, nor am I an economist. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about Slavoj Žižek's ideas, but I'm not necessarily going to criticize them, as I don't necessarily have the full baggage to do so. But I will talk about what I found the most interesting in this book. So fundamentally, in this book, he starts out very strongly by saying that there is a difference between future and avenir. So for those of you who don't speak French, there is a slight difference between both of them. Future is this fundamental idea that, at least in French and in many other languages, that the future is going to go on as we know it. It's a business as usual future, right? Where nothing really changes, but fundamentally it's the same thing on and on and on again, right? So it continues throughout time. Avenir, on the other hand, is a bit different because it implies something fundamentally different at its core. Like there's a future that's business as usual, and avenir is a future in which fundamentally things are different and will become different. And he says that the whole aim right now is that right now there is no future, as our political system is completely decaying right now. As such, our future is not there, as we can't let it be business as usual because that will spiral out of control. For Žižek, what needs to happen is a fundamental reimagining of what is going to happen. And he also goes into a very interesting premise that fundamentally what's going to happen in our future, be it avenir or business as usual future, is going to make sense retroactively. Like what happens next in our timeline, let's say, which I have no idea of, right? But what's going to happen next is going to basically shine a light, cast a light on events, which in hindsight will be like, whatever happens next will be like, oh, it was logical because there was this and this and this and that. But right now we're at a point we can't see all those logical points. But retroactively we interpret what has happened and what is happening as inevitable, at least according to Žižek. Basically what I'm saying is the future rewrites the past, that what happens next shines a light onto what has happened. It's the contrary normally it's done. It's like what has happened in the past shines a light on the future. No. What happens now for Žižek is that the future shines a light on what happened in the past, i.e. we redefine the past because of our future and not the other way around. And very interesting idea. And he goes on to explain that fundamentally the Ukraine and Russia war did not come as a surprise. It was something for him that Putin had basically warned the West of, that Putin in a way wants to conquer Ukraine because he sees Ukraine as an extension of Russia. This is very interesting because what he goes on to say and explain is that fundamentally an aggressor will always, or almost always, profess his intent. And that intent is to be taken seriously. We should not deny it, trivialize it, undermine it. He says that that's the big problem of the West, is that they did not want to see what was going to happen to Ukraine. In a way, we were blindsided because what has happened was that we were so invested in, the West, right, in that global point. The West was so blindsided by denial of everything will go on as it has always gone on. We will always be able to do business as usual. That when Russia struck Ukraine, fundamentally what happened is that we were blindsided because we did not want to see it. In the same way, for Žižek, as victims of an abuser might not want to see the bad side of the abuser, therefore they will, in a way, fundamentally cut off from that representation, meaning that, in a way, they will not heed to the warnings in the speech of the abuser. And for Žižek, that's exactly what happened with Putin. We did not take into account his warnings because we did not want to. We were in denial. And he says that that denial is ongoing in the West. And in a way, what we want is, instead of confronting Russia, we want a quick end. And in a way, we did not even believe that the Ukrainians would be resisting, at least according to Žižek. We basically thought that the government would collapse. We proposed Zelensky to escape in a plane. We did not believe that they could stand against Russia because Russia itself created itself as a myth of an unstoppable force. But we are seeing right now that the Ukrainians are fighting and are basically pushing as hard as they can to fight off the Russian offensive. And fundamentally, what he says, and very interesting enough, is that for him, for Žižek, the West did not even want to basically fight the Ukrainians to win, that they not invested that much into that. What the West wants is for peace to be maintained, or the illusion of peace. Problem is that with mentalities like the one of Putin, is that you can't really aim for that, because as Žižek points out, is that mentality is just after Ukraine there'll be another one and another one and another one. These types of mentalities don't just stop when they win. It's like it's absolute victory or it's nothing. There is no compromise to be had. Therefore, we in our Western vision, trying to compromise with someone that doesn't want to compromise is impossible. And to an extent, and this is me like leaping out to talk about this, is that it's the same kind of problem we had with Adolf Hitler and the Nazis back in the 1940s and 1930s, late 1930s, early 1940s. There was no compromise with the Nazis. The Nazis just invaded everyone until they were pushed back. Well, he says that, and he does not say that, he does not necessarily directly compare them, but it's the same kind of dilemma that we now have, is that we have to stop people that invade other countries before it gets too late, because basically there's no ending point. Even the atomic bomb is not that much of a deterrent. And fundamentally, there are ways, for example, of basically addressing that. And even though the Russians speak about nuclear war, and that given our state of denial, we shouldn't just say, oh, they'll never do it. Now, there is a true chance that things might escalate. And for Žižek, that's a real problem, and fundamentally one that we can't really resolve very easily. But he says that, nevertheless, there still needs to be resistance, because that type of mentality goes on and on and on. There is no ending point, therefore it's important to resist. Therefore, he sees that the Ukrainian resistance is incredibly, massively important for all of us, not just for the Ukrainians themselves, but for the West in general. Because if they go, basically the next to go for Žižek is Poland. And at that point, when NATO gets involved, we will not know if there will be a Third World War. And that spectre is there for Žižek, and I agree with him that things could escalate. Nevertheless, right, that's where the first point becomes important, is that there's future, which would be business as usual, and that business as usual would lead to a Third World War, and there is avenir, i.e. radical changed future. And maybe in that radical changed future, things can de-escalate. Also, very interestingly enough, for Žižek, we are not on the edge of the crisis, we are in the crisis. We are not 5 minutes before doomsday, we are in doomsday. So a very interesting perspective. Also, he goes on afterwards to explain that, and very interestingly enough, what we call work culture isn't so liberating. So why is it not for Žižek? Why is it something that limits us? Well, for Žižek, the problem with work culture is that it isn't a radical change. It doesn't aim at radical change. What it does is to try and make people conform. But it doesn't change the power dynamics. It just changes the vocabulary employed, i.e. people have the right to say something or to not say something. For him, work culture, and he goes on in the book to define it better, but the idea is that work culture is a superego, i.e. something of a moral conscience that is imposed and superimposed onto people, rather than being something that's just there because it's a necessity to not be racist, to not be misogynistic, to not be sexist. We are, in a way, we use that vocabulary to repress other people, i.e. you did not talk well enough, you did not use the right terms, you did not do this, or you did not do that. For him, it has reached a point where it becomes almost ridicule, in which, how can I say, it's a pseudo form of language that is used to oppress people that should not be repressed, or repressing people like university professors that fight for human rights, and not like silence them. So for him, work culture has gone too far, which is interesting because you would think that the leftist thinker would back work culture, but he does not really. What he backs is a radical leftist and socialist perspective, i.e. what he wants is radical change. And what he's saying is that work culture is in a way oppressing people and not necessarily getting out of the struggles, but enjoying the fact that some people have power over other people, be it through their speech, be it through their thinking. So therefore we are not changing the mold, we're not breaking the mold, we're just changing it. And that's a very interesting perspective, one that I had not heard in such clarity. So the book was very interesting on that point. So what are our options? Well, for Žižek, what is going to destroy us is our apathy, is the fact that it's a business as usual kind of state. Something that is, I can only say true, given how things are going. The more apathetic we are, the worse it's going to happen, because basically our apathy is just going to shape our basic future. So for him, what we should do is encourage basically a form of rebellion, but not like an aimless one, but one that aims to break the mold of what is expected. For example, he gives the example of Assange, saying that what was fundamental in Assange behavior, i.e. WikiLeaks releasing that information to the public, was that he didn't play the game of the elites, i.e. selling that information to another country. What he did was giving it to the public. That's a big no-go, because what happens is that creates humiliation, because for Žižek, all elites, as bad and as radically different as they might appear to be, all share the common force of wanting to keep power. Therefore, there is a solidarity of the elites against the people. And what Assange and Snowden did was fundamentally break that status quo by giving it to the public, i.e. showing the solidarity to the public, and also breaking the game of capitalism, because they did not sell the information, they did not want to basically play the game, and that not playing the game of capitalism is treason. And that's very interesting as a point, is that once we stop playing the game of capitalism, we become traitors. And that's where you might say, yes, but we, for example, when we're leftists, we have stopped to play the game of capitalism. Well, not for Žižek, because basically you're still within the system. You're just a controlled countermeasure for the system, but you're not against the system itself, which is very interesting again, as you would think that people that are radically against, at least verbally, ideologically, are outside of the system. They're not. In a way, they're part of the system. They are a player in which the system can use them for merchandise, can use them to narcissistically gain something by saying, oh, we're so different, we allow freedom of expression, we allow this, we allow that. So in a way that dissension is no dissension at all. In a very interesting way, it reminded me a lot of Les Temps Hypermodernes of Gilles Lipovetsky, in which he says that in our current world, all possibles are true and exist, and it's not a bug in a way. It's a feature, meaning that it's meant to be like that. It's meant to be as vast, as diverse, as contradictory as possible, because that's the whole point, because you can basically go anywhere. And what Slavoj Žižek is saying is that leftists and all of the leftists are in a way a controlled response, that they're not breaking the mold. So what will break the mold, or what will do it, is fundamentally reinventing democracy, reinventing who we are. Because it's not just changing the outside world for Žižek, because whatever we change, we have to radically change ourselves first and foremost. Therefore, the whole psychological point to Žižek in this book is that fundamentally we change ourselves radically. It's not just the outside world we're changing, it's us. And as such, both changes have to come simultaneously. There is no change in the outside world if we can't change our inner world, and vice versa. So it's a very interesting. I feel that this was a very interesting read. I also felt as a psychologist that a lot of tools were missing for me to perhaps properly engage and properly discuss all of those points. Nevertheless, the book was very interesting, and he ends on saying that fundamentally what we need is not a peace war economy, right? What we need right now is wartime communism, which basically is to be imagined, is to be invented yet. So again, Žižek is in a way saying that we have no future, but that doesn't mean we don't have any avenir, i.e. positive future or radical change future. So again, very interesting book. And would I recommend it? Well, I would if you're interested in politics and want a psychological / philosophical spin on it. If you're not, well, it's not going to be that much of an interest. But I found it to be interesting, and it was a nice break from the pure psychological reviews that I make here. So I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to discuss it or want to leave something, feel free to do so in the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.